And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today we are going to talk about the boys. We're going to talk about all of the boys. We have every card in the set that we're going to discuss here. This is something I've been excited about for literally my entire time with the game. I've wanted to see this IP make its way here, and we are going to dive right in, starting with Billy Butcher. Billy Butcher is a boys affiliated 3/4/6 to start. He has the power Where's Your Rage? Put +1 counters on a character on your side equal to the number of characters with 1 health in your KO pile. Costs a green. Your mileage is going to vary here. There are certainly powers we've seen in the game where you pay a green, you put a couple, 3, 4 +1 counters on something that have been really powerful in various different metas. This does require a little bit of setup. So maybe the first time you activate this in a game, it might not be the most powerful ability, but certainly by the end of the game, this could be pay a green and get +8/+8. That could be massive. You have a lot of control over that because you get to choose how you build your deck. And obviously, if this is your main character, you're going to be building towards making Where's Your Rage better rather than worse, of course. His level up condition, spank them when they get out of line. Level up 4. When Butcher attacks a supporting character, he gains XP equal to its printed health. So in a mirror match, that will be a little bit annoying. You're going to have to attack a bunch of 1 health characters. But it's generally fair to say that your opponent is going to play into this to some degree. Everybody likes multi-health characters. Sticky characters are better than not sticky characters. So it's not often that you're going to run into a deck that's all 1 health characters. Now, knowing that this guy exists in the format, if he ends up being like strong in whatever meta, it makes all the sense in the world that players may gravitate towards 1 health characters to deny Butcher some extra experience early. But at the end of the day, I think I probably want my deck to do what my deck is supposed to do. And I have a hard time seeing this guy being so out of control that it's going to push everybody off of multi-health characters for a whole format. So his level up is probably going to be easy. I think getting it before turn 4 is going to happen in a lot of games, maybe not every game. Turn 4 does feel like it could be getting into the like late territory to have a stat line like 3/4, but Where's Your Rage can maybe compensate for that potentially slower level up condition. Let's see what we get at level 2. At level 2, Butcher is still boys affiliated. He becomes a 6/7. That's an okay stat line. Stays at 6 health. He continues to have Where's Your Rage. So again, the part of the game where I think you're going to get your most use out of this Where's Your Rage power is absolutely going to be the end of the game. So the fact that he has this on his level 2, I think just makes sense. I'm just gonna hurt you. Any combat, pay a blue, stun Butcher, and KO each enemy supporting character in combat with him. Now, I think the thing that makes this guy actually potentially good and a real threat is the combination of these 2 powers. You have the ability to make Butcher get really big, and you send somebody in there to try to, assuming your opponent doesn't have just clean counter removal like a Sonic Disruptor or even the or whatever, something like that. If they have to actually deal with him as far as stats, well, the kind of characters that are going to have the really big stats are going to be the supporting characters. It's not every main character is going to be able to contend with a turn 7 play where your 6/7 gets +7/+7 counters. Like that's just going to be out of reach of some MCs. So now we're at the point where, okay, do I have to assume that there's going to be, I'm going to get the stun on him, so he's going to lose those counters, but am I going to lose my best guy? And then there's a little bit of a head game there. Well, maybe the opponent attacks in with not their best guy, and instead of using, I'm just going to hurt you, you have a plot twist to get out of it or something else. Or you let the attack go through so you stun each other. There's potentially ways where your opponent can be trying to play around this and you can really like trap them. So whether you're KOing a character or opting not to use this power just to get a stun back, either way, this is a really good tool. I think this is an absolutely fair main character with real potential upside. I am super excited to play this guy. It's maybe not like the most broken thing, but honestly, given the context of the show, I think having the boys not have really extreme powers makes a lot of sense. And for Butcher to have his powers to be kind of based around the idea of having these 1 health characters, which in versus is generally like humans, like mortals tend to have 1 health, and like superheroes like will have more health based on how tough they are. I mean, it's not perfect thematically, but that's the general idea of health on supporting characters. So this really makes Butcher based around wanting to defend, which is, I think, probably some of the best parts of his character. Butcher is a complicated guy. He absolutely has some dark side. I almost want to do a whole episode where I just unpack Butcher as a character. I'm so fond of this guy. Uh, and making this card focus on his like nobler traits, like the fact that he wants to stand up for people who have been harmed by these superheroes. Yes, he is selfishly motivated to some degree, uh, but he really does believe in trying to like find justice for these one health characters in the KO pile. I really like that thematically. The hurt you thing where he is willing to take damage himself in order to get one over on a soup, I also think kind of speaks to the best part of his character, and the fact that in a very real way, there might be some light spoilers here. I think the set is only going to touch on the first season of The Boys, but I've seen all of The Boys that is out, and I've read the comics multiple times, so there may be some like I'm not going to go super deep into the story, but just fair warning, there may be some light spoilers that sneak out of my mouth here and there. What I was about to say before I stopped myself with a spoiler alert there is that Butcher, on some level, more in the comics than the show, but on some level, he is on a suicide mission, like like the operative in Firefly, where Mal. I quote this too often, but Mal is like, this, what do you do? And I'm going to create this perfect world. He's like, oh, so me and my people have to lay down and die so you can live in your perfect world. And the operative's attitude is like, well, I couldn't live there. I'm a monster. I think a lot of that is in Billy Butcher, where the world he wants to live in would not be a hospitable place to who and what he is, but he doesn't care because he cares about creating that better world for other people in his most charitable and noble readings. There is a dark side to this character, of course, as in all the boys. Overall, mechanically, I really like this guy. He's not explosively automatically overpowered, but I think there's a lot of things that he does that I'm just a massive fan of. All right, Frenchie, level 1, boys affiliated 255 with range. I think I talked about this one already a little bit. The Gunrunner by trade power is ridiculous. During your turn, while Frenchie's in the back row, other characters in that row have range. Now, there is going to be a little bit of a challenge in deck building here where you're going to want to be able to put characters who shouldn't have range into the back row to get advantage of this. But a lot of times, decks that build with a lot of support characters in the back row, the main character is the thing that goes up front, like Rogue decks. You put Rogue up front, she makes it hard for your opponent to get to your supporting characters. So you're going to have to put something in this deck that wants to be up front, that can block for Frenchie and block for these supporting characters that you're trying to get this cheat range. Well, not cheat, but give characters who shouldn't have range. So to get advantage of that, you're going to need to have supporting characters that fulfill roles both as back row and front row. Now, that's not an impossible challenge in deck building, obviously, but it does make things a little bit more interesting to think about than, say, a main character like Rogue. Well, it's like you put her big butt and her wings up front, and then you put all your support stuff in the back. Frenchie's going to require a little more finesse than that. While still, I think you are going to have a lot of emphasis on trying to get important characters that shouldn't have range, give them range with this Gunrunner power. I know a lot. I know a little about a lot of things. Level up condition 10. When you play a card, Frenchie gains an XP. There are card clarifications built within two. By the way, I am using the the Pocket versus Progressive Web app made by OBS. Shout out to OBS. This is absolutely excellent. You can find information about it in the Discord, the Versus Discord. So this does have a clarification here that says every card you play counts for Frenchie, including resources, which I'm glad they clarified. I was not sure if resources were going to count as being played, which means getting that 10 experience is not going to be that difficult. You play a resource every turn, so that's one right there. Now, obviously, you're not going to wait until turn 10, but if you have a sufficient number of like plot twists and low cost characters, and I think you do want to have low cost characters because again, you want to be able to put some blockers up front, but also have characters benefit from the Gunrunner power in the back. So him underdropping, I think, makes a lot of sense for the character, and you're going to get your value out of getting range on people who shouldn't have it. Plus, it feeds into his level up. So once Frenchie levels up, I love the card art on this one. This is not a moment that makes Frenchie look particularly like awesome. Like he's not doing something dynamic and violent, but he's like breaking into a place and he's actually right about to be caught here and he gets saved. Again, minor spoilers for the show. Like, there's a character who all she had to do was turn her head and Frenchie would have been busted. And he's like dangling there helpless. I feel like I shouldn't like this card art because it doesn't make the character like this is a moment of vulnerability for the character rather than a moment of awesomeness. But in the spirit of the boys and everything that this weird, creepy, messed up show is, I love this choice of card art. I don't know. Maybe that makes me hypocritical given how often I go on about wanting dynamic art where the character looks cool, but man, this one does it for me. It really makes me laugh. So he keeps Gunrunner by trade at level 2, of course. Seems kind of fundamental to how this card is built. It's going to be fundamental to how you build your deck. He has range. In fact, did he have range at level 1? Yeah, he did. Okay. Range, 585, and I've developed a certain niche. Uh, 2 blue, 2 yellow, 2 green, 2 red, KO a defending main character. Alt win conditions are something that have been there are times where I really like alternate win conditions. I think there are things in the game that are fun ways to create alt wins, but I do think players should really have to work for them. Some of them that have existed in the game have been way too easy, able to pull off way too early. I don't think this one falls into the category of easy or early. First, you have to level Frenchie up, and then you have to amass a pretty significant number of cards. Even if we assume you hit a resource every or location to put in your resource row every single turn, that only gets you like halfway there. So this is a deck that I feel like you almost don't even care about the alternate win condition on this guy. Looking at Bert's old concept of chopping the legs off, probably most famously played with the Captain America MCU deck, who has an alt win condition that I don't think anybody's ever used, but his level 1 power is just good enough that he's able to win games in that way. I think Frenchie might fall into that category as well. You play this guy for the gun runner by trade. If every once in a while you're able to pull off some shenanigans where you're able to get access to 8 resources, maybe you'll be able to do this, but I don't think you play this guy for the alternate win condition. I think you play this guy for gunrunner by trade. And in that way, I think he's quite good. I think this is, again, another uh, hit thematically, another hit mechanically. Doesn't seem obnoxious, doesn't seem suffocating, which alt win conditions can be obnoxious and suffocating. So it's kind of cool to see one here that I remember when Maximus first came out, people said, oh, that's too expensive. You're never going to be able to pay for it. And then people were doing it on turn 2. So this looks like Super Awesome Games is like, we dare you to break this alternate win condition. This one, some of the earliest ones like Gamora were pretty bad. They were like really, really, really hard to pull off. And then later we got like the Gam Launcher combo, which made it quite a bit easier to pull off. So we've had varying relationships with alternate win conditions throughout the life of verses, and sometimes they're kind of useless, sometimes they feel sort of fair. I feel like the Dutch get to the chopper win condition, and maybe I'm biased because I played a deck that used that, but even when I played against decks that use that, I never felt like it was unfair. Like, if it takes you until turn 7 to do your win the game combo, there was a lot of a game before you get to that. I think the alternate win conditions that have always felt like unfair are like Pixie Maximus or anything that you can like pop off on turn like 2, turn 3. I'm just not a huge fan of that. I mean, they are cool to see happen. If somebody finds a cool combination of cards and brings that to a tournament, I'm not throwing any shade at that. I just mean from a design perspective, I would prefer to play a version of Versus where there aren't alternate win conditions popping off on turn 2 and 3 like all over the place. Every once in a while, the occasional meta, the occasional format, sure, fine. That stuff's fun. I'm not a hater. Just I also want to play versus and not just play like rock paper scissors to see who can race to their alt win fastest. Again, that entire trip into the weeds was just me saying I don't think this main character's alt win condition falls into that dangerous category. I think this is totally fair. Maybe even fair to the point of being too hard to pull off. I don't think it's going to be a defining part of the card. All right, Wee Huey. So he is a boys affiliated 155. That is not a good stat line to start, Huey, but that kind of fits the character. Just because you fall. Any combat, pay a green. When Huey is defending this combat, if he gets stunned, he doesn't get wounded. Oh, so it turns any stun into a daze. And when he gets stunned, recover him. Oh, so it's daze plus tough. Only it's not May. You have to recover him. So if you use the fall power, he has to pop back up and potentially get cracked again. Like it's not optional. When Huey recovers, he gains 1 XP. Okay, I mean, depending upon your draw, you could do this turn 1, maybe? Like, if your opponent goes first, no, because even if they attack with main character plus another guy and you have the 2 greens, that's still only... So it's probably going to be, at the earliest, like a turn 2 level up, which is still pretty good. Um, Maybe a little later if your opponent's trying to be cute and not give you XP. The one real big drawback here is your opponent does seem to have a fair amount of control over your XP condition. With a defense of 5, they may be able to formate in such a way that you can't suicide yourself on certain turns. But overall, I think with 3 experience, the idea of him leveling up within the first half of the game, like before turn 4 or 5, is probably realistic most of the time. Um, Hang on. I don't like how this looks. There we go. Okay, so Huey, level 2, boys affiliated, 3-10-5. That is a very, very big defense line. Uh, he still has Just Because You Fall, which allows him to, again, get daze and tough anytime he's about to be wounded. Whatever the price is, I'll pay it. Main phase, any of the 4 basic colors, stun a supporting character that has a superpower with the same power symbol that Huey paid. So a lot of times when you see these kinds of powers, the first thought is, oh man, that's so versatile, I can use whatever color I want. No, you can't. You can only use the color that your opponent presents you. So this is another one, kind of like Frenchie. I'm not sure how hard you lean into this level 2 power. There's definitely going to be times where it's useful. And if you have a good read on the meta, you'll know which colors are going to be more important, like which late game characters you really need to make sure you can stun. So, okay, uh, character that uses red is the 7 drop that everybody seems to think is good, so we want to make sure we have red, and that may inform some of the other cards that you put in your deck. You probably don't want to have the only outlet for your reds be a level 2 character that requires your opponent to play a certain type of superpower in order to get that value out of it. That could be problematic, but overall, this is going to be something that every once in a while you're going to smoke your opponent's best guy. It's going to feel awesome. A lot of times you're just going to be kind of living on that 10 health, and you're going to have to play supporting characters in this deck that have some aggression, because otherwise, I don't think you can rely on whatever the price is, I'll pay it, as your removal and your way to get to the opposing main character. I don't think that seems realistic. That to me looks like gravy, so this is going to be kind of like the Xander main character from the Buffy set, where you've got to find your attacks and you've got to find your ability to deal damage somewhere other than the main character. This guy sits up front, kind of like Rogue that I mentioned earlier, although he doesn't fly, but he's going to sit up front. He's going to make life annoying for your opponent to get through. Maybe you have some like important back row characters that can shoot at range or do other supporty type stuff. Makes it hard for your opponent to get to them because Huey's butt is so big. Seems like a playable main character. All right, Kimiko. She is a 4-3-6, level 1, boys affiliated, the female. Any combat, pay a red. Kimiko strikes an additional time this combat, so she'd be like cracking for 8. She can do this on the defense or on the attack. That's a massive attack value for a level 1 main character. Yes, it does require a skill to be paid to it, but still, that's good. Of the species, level up 4, when Kimiko strikes, she gains 1 XP. I really like that they didn't just give her a attack buff like Kimiko gets +4 attack this turn, kind of like we've seen on like X23 or whatever. They make it so that she strikes an extra time. So she's leveling up on turn 2, assuming you find the 2 reds. And if you don't, well, maybe you attack in such a way into like a 1-drop where she doesn't get stunned, so you get a double stun there, and then your opponent cracks you back, and you get a strike again. Like, this feels like a very doable, very early game level up, as early as 2. Uh, Definitely 3 or 4 is super, super reasonable. All right, Kimiko level 2. Man, these card clarification things are throwing my sizing off just a little bit here. Kimiko level 2 is 776. Good stat line. Continues to have the additional strike, so that becomes a 14 that she can potentially put out there, and much deadlier than the male. Any combat, pay a green. If Kimiko is defending, cancel the combat, then start a melee combat with Kimiko as the attacker and the former attackers as the defenders. During that attack, you can play combat plot twists that don't have the any combat symbol. So it essentially lets you take a tiny combat phase in the middle of your opponent's turn. Now, I was wrong in how I initially read this card. The phrasing of the former attackers, plural, become defenders, plural, and you're attacking all of them. That made me think immediately like, oh, well, if you're attacking all of these people, the only other example we have of attacking multiple people in the game is Massive, so I would assume she is able to strike all of them. That is not correct. I assume that's what this card clarification is here, is that she has to do she strikes one of the defenders. Yeah. I don't understand why they didn't just say choose one of the attackers and that becomes the defender and shut the door on this entire confusion. Doesn't require any clarification. Makes total sense. I'm a little bit weird on how they worded this card, but it is what it is. That's why we ask for clarification. That's why TOs exist. So, very, very strong, very aggressive main character. Is able to get big enough to stun 7, 8 drops in the game. Really crazy. Can turn things around on people. You're attacking into her for a wound, and all of a sudden she cancels your combat and is stunned attacking you. Fits the character thematically. Really, the only thing I would have wanted on this card that isn't here is some reference to, again, spoilers, Kimiko attacking people's faces. I guess that's more in the comics than it is in the show. All right, Mother's Milk. Plan ahead. Or sorry, he's a 255. Not a huge fan of the 255 stat block. Plan ahead. Pay a yellow during the build phase. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put one on the top and the rest on the bottom. I am always a huge fan of these kinds of powers. Card selection is like my second favorite thing behind card draw. I love all that stuff. More comfortable on a smaller scale. Level up 4. When you play a character or an equipment with cost 3 or less, Mother's Milk gains 1 XP. So he's got to do 4 of these. You could play a 1-drop on turn 1, play 2 1-drops on turn 2, and then level up on turn 3 pretty easily. So this reminds me of the old Luke Cage kind of level up where you've got to get the, except you don't have to spend your recruit points to gain the XP. You spend the recruit points on whatever it is that you wanted to recruit, and he gets the XP off of it. So it's like the Defender's Luke Cage level up, but like better, like objectively better. Very easy, very reasonable to do. Once you level up, Mother's Milk becomes a 495. I like that defensive stat line on him. He continues to have plan ahead, which I also like. Stick to the plan. Build, pay 2 red. Man, they really are enjoying the multi-location powers in this set. My goodness. Pay 2 red for the rest of the game. Okay, well, if it's for the rest of the game, it's justified to pay more than 1 superpower symbol. For the rest of the game, while Mother's Milk is face up on your side, you may look at the top card of your deck at any time. You may play characters, equipment, and plot twists from the top of your deck. Okay, so there was the... Oh gosh, I'm not going to remember his name. It was the 4-cost Guardians affiliated character that came out in Legacy. Starhawk, maybe? Who had this ability to look at the top card of your deck. This was a team affiliation plot twist in the original Versus system that let you look at and play cards off the top of your deck. I absolutely love this power. And the fact that Mother's Milk can set up this power for himself just makes it that much better. This is an excellent power. His defensive stat line means that you're probably going to be able to get later into the game and dig for combo pieces in a way that a lot of other characters can't. This is a fantastic main character. This feels, at the outset, this feels breakable to me. This guy feels like he's going to be the one who's going to be able to dig up all the combo pieces and assemble his ability to do something really disgusting with a lot greater of ease than many other characters, especially within the photo format. I really like this main character. Okay, so just to kind of rehash the boys' main characters before we move on to supporting characters, I'm a huge fan of Butcher. Seems totally reasonable. I'm a huge fan of Frenchie. I'm a little skeptical about his alt win, but everything else about the card is very playable. Huey is probably the weakest of the bunch, in my opinion. I don't think his level 2 power is going to be that reliable, but he's so defensive and is going to be so annoying to get through. The draws where he gets a lot of greens and is able to just keep standing back up again every time he falls is going to be super annoying, but it'll kind of live and die on the basis of how strong his supporting character back row is. Kamiko is just aggro, aggro, aggro. Again, very playable, seems very threatening to me. I like her a lot. Mother's Milk is like Super Awesome Games made a character to specifically appeal to my preferences as a player, the things that I like to do. The only thing that I'm just a little iffy on is how dependent he's going to be on getting a good draw to get that level of condition. You are going to have to lean into that a little bit because if you miss, if it's turn 5, 6, and you haven't leveled up, you've probably lost that game because 5 defense is not going to carry you deep into the late game. But man, that level 2 looks good. Stick to the plan, plan ahead. These are both great powers. I'm really excited about this character. All right, supporting character. So, thumbs up for the boys' main characters so far. Everything is positive. I've very few like any negative anything to say about these cards. I'm having a blast so far. Okay. Hugh Campbell Sr. It's cool that they got Simon Pegg in here. I don't know if this character actually deserves a card. For people who didn't read the comics, Derek Robertson actually based the appearance of Huey on Simon Pegg without asking him if that was okay. It was before Simon Pegg blew up as this like mega popular actor, and the boys comic was not supposed to be that popular either. So it's cool that they fit him in here, but like based on the actual show and like what this character means to the show, meh. I, whatever. Okay, so he's a 0-3-1. You don't have to fight. Main characters on your side get +2, +2. Okay, sure. You play that. That immediately offsets like the mother's milk weakness I was talking about. He fits into the mother's milk level up condition, offsets his low stat line. This fits with Huey extremely well. That's going to make him even harder to deal with. Yeah, this guy's very playable. Not very flashy, not super fun. The one drawback is if you don't have a flyer in front to protect him, this guy's not going to stick around very long. Robin Ward. Okay. One cost, 1/1/1. She was a half step off the curb. When Robin gets attacked, KO her. Then choose a face up boys character on your side to gain 1 XP or a +1/+1 counter. Wow. Wow. Okay, this just clarifies that gaining extra XP once you're fully leveled up won't do anything. I'm not sure that even needed a card clarification, like, of course. Um, XP acceleration is something they have been very, very reluctant to dive into very much over the course of this game. There are very few cards that let you gain extra XP. I I don't know if this is necessarily going to be super valid in this box. It certainly is going to help characters like Butcher, uh, Frenchie. You know, you throw Robin up front and they have to deal with her. That's like a free XP for Frenchie while she's coming and going. Um, so there are cards that'll benefit from it in this box, but I almost think that this is a card. Well, yeah, and it's limited to just boys characters, so you're not going to be able to go to the wider card pool. So if she doesn't see play in boys' main characters, she doesn't see play at all. I'm not sure about Robin. Probably so early game, this looks great. This feels great. But if you think about drawing this card on like turn 6, I guess you just put her in the row. Like if your character's already leveled up, do you care about the +1? Like do you commit a resource point and a card to try to get, and she has to be attacked, right? Yeah. So your opponent has to actually swing into her. I guess it could be an annoying speed bump if your opponent has no flyers and you have her up front, so they have to deal with her, and then haha, I get to throw a +1 counter somewhere. Yeah, I don't know about Robin. I don't know if that card's good. All right, Sherry. 2 cost, boys affiliate. I'm not going to say boys affiliated for all these guys. They're all boys affiliated. 2 cost, 3/2/1 range. Explosive diversion. Main phase, pay a blue. KO a face down location on your side. If you do, choose a main character on your side. While it's in your back row, it can't be attacked until your next turn. Ooh. Well, it's just true that sometimes you're desperate and there's break glass in case of emergency situations. You play this card out, you pay the blue, you go down a resource. Man, that feels brutal to have to go down a resource. But it does make it so your main character, like, so if you're 1 wound away from hell, from death, and the other person's 1 wound away from death, this buys you a turn. That is a really, really strong effect. But you're potentially hobbling yourself for the rest of the game. Oh, wow, that's hard to evaluate. I think it could potentially, well, I mean, in photo, things like TVA exist, the ability to generate like extra resources from it. So maybe you can offset how bad this is. And if you play low curve, you play like a more flood style game, and it just, even though your characters are mostly speed bumps, you're at a certain point though, I feel like if you're playing out little guys and you're KOing your resources so that they can't attack your main character, they're obviously going to be attacking into your little guys. At a certain point in the game, you're not going to have enough cards left to continue that plan anymore, and now you're down a bunch of resources and you don't have anything, like you're gassed out. Um, hmm. There are going to be games where this card is going to be super relevant. This card is going to win games some of the time, but how much of the time and how much of a liability, that's tough to evaluate. I think this is good. This is a really good effect, but it is a dangerous effect. In the wrong hands, that effect could lose you games too. So you got to be careful with Sherry. Probably appropriate for the character. 2 costs, Grace Mallory, 0/1/1. Man, all these stat lines are really bad. I guess Sherry's stat line is okay, but the rest of these stat lines are really bad. I'm the founder of your little club. You pay 1 less to recruit your first boys character not named Grace Mallory. When you recruit your first boys character not named Grace Mallory, each turn draw a card. Okay, well, I was worried about the swarmy aggro boys deck running out of gas. Here's a way to get more gas and get characters out with less resources. So maybe in the tapestry of how the boys team works, Sherry is going to be just fine. Uh, Getting characters into play for cheaper is the fundamental basis of the old school machine gun combo. This is good. Ramp is good. This is like soft ramp. So you're not going up resources, but you're getting characters for cheaper. So it functionally ends up in a very similar place as ramp, but it's more controlled and contained. She seems playable, but she's not going to be able to fight for you. So we're going to have to see some boys characters that can actually fight, or I don't know what we're gonna do. Like it can't just be support characters and a main character. We got to have some supports that can actually get in there and kill something. All right, 3 cost, CIA Deputy Director Susan Rayner. Wow, that's a lot of words on a card title. Range 3/6/1. You and your corporation are screwed. Main phase, pay a red, exhaust an enemy location. It can't ready until after its next turn. So here's another card. I went down a resource with Cherry to. Is it Cherry or Sherry? Cherry. I went down a resource with Cherry to prevent you from being able to attack my main character, and I made you be down a resource. So now you're playing my game. Even though I'm behind, I'm artificially forcing you to hang out with me on turn 3 for 2 turns instead of you being on 4, me being on 3. Seems like a lot. Uh, is she good? But yeah, I mean, if Cherry taking one of your resources away permanently is a big cost, and I think it is. Susan Rayner taking away one of your opponent's resources for a single turn is probably pretty annoying. Um, is it worth the red? I mean, I guess if you're in a Mother's Milk deck and you need to spend red somewhere else and you want to slow your opponent down while you're trying to dig for your combo pieces, yeah, she fits in there perfect. She's on color. Uh, only needs 2 reds, so you're gonna have a surplus. Yeah, I can see this card being playable. I don't know if this is gonna be like widely playable. I think it's gonna be specific to certain decks where this effect is really important, like hobbling your opponent and trying to keep them down, either because you're carrying yourself and you know you're going to be down, or because you're trying to prevent them from getting to these bigger, like majorly impactful late game cards before you can assemble your win condition or combo or whatever it is. So, not widely playable, but in the decks that want what she's doing, I think this is a good card. Man, all these cards are good. Huey, I don't usually go out after a massacre. I love these ability names. When an enemy character gets KO'd, you may hide Huey. He's a 5/4/1. Um, sure. So this is a character that can actually fight on turn three, like not the best, but you could send him into like your opponent's 2 drop safely and then hide him so he doesn't get cracked back and you'll get 2 uses out of him. It makes him a little bit stickier. Um, if he's in the back row shooting with Frenchie and your opponent gets through your front row character, but they crack him on the way in, you could hide him and then they can't pick him off, and you've got another 5 range to help Frenchie out there in the back row. Uh, Not the most exciting 3 drop, but that massacre power is definitely going to be relevant. It's almost like giving him a second health some of the time. Okay, Frenchie 4 costs 6/4/1 with range. I would like to see some more aggressive attacks on some of these characters. I carry them all with me. Main phase, green. For each character Frenchie has stunned this game, put a -1 counter on each enemy character. I think we talked about this one in somewhere. This card was revealed. This is potentially good, but it's going to take a little bit of work to get there. The turn you play him, he hits somebody. I don't think you're going to play the green then. It does hit the whole board, so there certainly are going to be times where a -1 blanket across the board is going to allow you to just edge through some damage, kind of like the way Mallory offsets the damage that you're doing to yourself with Cherry. If you're playing a swarmy, low-costy, underdroppy deck, this is a way to make your opponent's characters just a little bit smaller so they're a little more reachable by your swarm of weenies. And if you are able to stun a few guys with Frenchie, let me see this card clarification. If Frenchie is KO'd and you play a new copy of him, the count will start over. Yeah, I figured that was the case. So if you're able to stun a few guys with Frenchie, this could turn into a board-wide Thunderbolt. Uh, your opponent's probably not going to let that happen most of the time. If your opponent does let that through, if they can't clear this guy for like 3 turns and you're able to pay a green and put -3 on every card on their side, at that point he's probably win more. You were probably going to win that game anyway. So the upside on this guy is potentially very scary. I don't think he's going to get there that often with only 1 health and 4 defense on turn 4, but certainly a playable card. Mother's Milk, 4 cost, boys affiliated, 4/8/1. You get further by treating people like people. Choose an enemy player to draw a card, and then you draw 2 cards. Uh, I don't think I like this. Yes, it will dig for something that you need, but you're actually not getting anything more than your opponent because you're spending a card for this effect and then you're drawing 2. So you're actually like net ahead 1 card and your opponent gets to draw a card. So this is like I guess 8 defense is annoying on turn 4. Yeah. Given how awesome his main character was, I'm kind of okay with the supporting character being a little lackluster. I'm not impressed with this card. There's certainly going to be times, like if you have a combo deck and you're looking for very specific cards, you're going to be willing to play this guy. You're going to be willing to dig for those specific cards with this power. But I think if what you're on is playing somebody that's hanging out with the boys and you want to be on a combo deck, I think the Mother's Milk main character is going to be the way to go. And I don't know about this one. Again, I guess generally speaking, if we're envisioning a version of the boys where we're trying to underdrop cards and play multiple smaller things every turn of the game, being able to draw 2 and maybe re-up your gas tank a little bit towards the mid, getting toward into the late game, maybe there's some value there, but I don't know. I don't know about that 4 drop. All right, 5 cost Butcher. He has stealth. I always like stealth. That's a very, very good word. He is a 7/7/1. Don't worry, it can get a lot more horrible. That's true, and it does. If an enemy supporting character would gain any number of wounds or -1 counters, it gains twice that many instead. um, Now that's the kind of card you want to have in your back row, getting range off of Frenchie. I don't even care about the stealth. I think you just want this guy to live as many turns as possible and let other characters put in the work and create the wounds, and then Butcher turns it into another one. I think you want to stick this guy and you want to protect him. Like I don't care about stealth on this character. 7/7 is a little. I mean, it's fine given how good the rest of this card. His 7/7 is fine on turn 5. I wouldn't mind it have to see him maybe get like pushed a little. Given how, oh man, like I was gonna say giving him a little more defense would have been cool because of how good the horrible keyword is that you want to keep him alive. But then again, he has the flexibility to be an attacker, and 7 damage on 5 is a relevant number. Like, yeah, yeah, this card's super playable. There's gonna be times where you're gonna play him and you're gonna put him up front just to make sure you can get into somebody's back row. And there's going to be times where you're going to protect him in your own back row because that horrible keyword is like horrible for your opponent. Especially, have we seen? I don't think we've seen a whole lot of -1 counter generation other than supporting character Frenchie. But you play Frenchie into Butcher, and if he lives, then you pay a green and double the counters, which gets out of hand real quick. So if Frenchie stuns a guy on turn 4, and then on turn 5 stuns another guy, and you played Butcher on 5 and you pay a green, you just put 4 -1s on the entire board. And all it really needs to make that combo happen is the 3 cards, the 4, the 5, and the green, and for Frenchie to live for 1 turn, which doesn't feel like it's asking a lot. Wow. Wow. Yeah, this guy's good. What? I don't think Popclaw should be boys affiliated, but okay. 5 cost, 3/7/1. Terminal Beauty, any combat red. When Popclaw strikes a supporting character, KO it. Okay. Yeah, I 3 attack on a 5 drop is kind of unacceptable. I get that what she's here for is so you can spend a red on her and just KO some anything. Um, Yeah, I guess in the Mother's Milk Swarm deck, you're gonna have the extra reds and you're gonna need the removal. So I guess she would have a home in that strategy. I'm not super impressed with that card though. 6 cost Kamiko, 8/2. That is a heck of a stat line. She has flight on your turn. Okay, I like that. So she could potentially butcher into her. They could team attack together into the back row for 15 on turn 6. That's awesome. While in melee combat, she strikes before. Oh, ferocious. Yeah, okay. Uh, and a miracle. Build phase, pay a green. If Kamiko is in your KO pile, put her onto your side with a +1 counter. uh, so you attack and kill something on turn 6. They have to attack into her on 7 to get her out of there, which probably means whatever they sent into her gets clipped back because she has such a big attack. Then on turn 7, you play a 7 drop, pay a green, and put her into play, and she's a 9/3 with range because Frenchie's your main character. This seems like a playable 6 drop. Uh, 6 cost Mesmer. Again, I don't feel like this guy should be boys affiliated. Like he helps them in the first season a little bit, but not like because he's one of them. Anyway, he's a 2/9/1. There are no secrets from me. Main phase, pay yellow, look at the enemy player's hand and choose a card. That player discards that card. Cool. Awesome. Force the enemy player to chuck their best card, whatever that is in the given situation. 9 defense. He might stick around for a couple turns. You get a couple uses out of this power. Uh, especially turn 6, turn 7, when people's hands tend to start to be getting depleted. So one card, I mean, that might be 50% of their options on turn 7. Whereas if this guy was a lower drop, it might be like 25% of their options, or even lower. Yeah. Um, if you have the breathing room that you can afford to play something that can't get in there and fight, I don't think you can necessarily play this guy if you're already behind on board. You probably need something like a Kamiko to come out and actually affect the board on turn 6, because that is getting into the late game. But without a doubt, this is going to be a thing that can protect you from combos, especially if it's a combo that relies on a one of a kind card. You pick this off and just GG the game right there off of this. I mean, I'm not super fan of this guy's stats, but ignoring the stats on this 6 drop, uh, you pay yellow, win the game. There are decks where that's going to be the case. Uh, yeah, seems very playable. This is a clean answer to stuff like the Mayor PD combo, or like that Red Skull deck that relies on one of a kind plot twists. Like this just lets you go in there and snipe the card that they need. Starlight, 7 cost, 9/6/1 with range. Um, Not a huge fan of 6 defense on a 7 drop. When Starlight gets attacked for the first time each turn, you may daze an attacker. Okay, well, she's a fighter. She's going to fight, even with her 6 butt. Basically, giving her, like, shrink extra on that definitely makes up for the 6 defense. Touch me and I'll burn your eyes out. Main phase blue, remove an enemy hand from the game face down. For the rest of the game, at the start of each player's turns, they randomly put 2 of those cards into their hand. This could be a game-winning power. This could be the kind of power you take away your opponent's entire hand. They are just out of options. They don't have enough turns left in the game before you kill them to get their whole hand back. Maybe the important card they needed to recruit next turn, now they're not able to. They're in top deck mode. I mean, it is kind of like double top deck mode, because you'll get the cards off the top of your deck and you'll get 2 cards that were formerly in your hand. So there are going to be times where you pay this and it doesn't really do anything. And there's going to be times where you hit turn 7 and your opponent doesn't have much in their hand anyway, if anything. So you pay a blue and like put them off their hand for like your combat phase, which could be relevant. Like if their hand has plot twists that could frustrate you, even if they get those plot twists back right away because they only have 2 cards in their hand, you were able to push through attacks that you shouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And at turn 7, those attacks that you push through uninhibited by plot twists could be game-winning attacks. That is getting into the late game. Yeah, this is a very playable 7 drop. Diabolical. I am super excited that we have a plot twist named Diabolical. This is something Billy Butcher says all the time. It's like his catchphrase to some degree. It's a little funny to me that Frenchie is the one featured on the card called Diabolical, but that's fine because Frenchie looks awesome in this art. I love how this looks. Any combat, put -1 counters on a supporting character in the combat equal to its printed health. So this is going to be less effective in like Butcher mirror matches. You're like throwing -1 counter onto a 1 health character doesn't seem nearly as good, but you put this on something like Thing or any of the characters that have 2, 3, like this just gets better and better based on how much health the character has. So the harder the character is to remove, the more devastating this plot twist is to those characters. It will be meta dependent a little bit if there's a lot of people who are deliberately playing or the best supporting characters in the format happen to all be 1 health characters, then this card's efficacy goes down somewhat significantly. But I think it's unlikely that we enter too many formats where there aren't multi-health characters. And +2/+2, I mean, we were playing You Won't Like Her When She's Angry, like back in the A-Force days. That's still definitely a playable plot twist. There has been like some power creep within the game, but in one of the areas that things have crept a little is seeing more and more multi-health, 2, 3, 4 health characters, and that just makes this plot twist even better. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Mind them bars. Main phase. Push an enemy front row supporting character to its back row. It is immobile on its next turn. Um, it's a little weird to me that this is limited to supporting characters. I feel like pushing a main character to the well, I guess you do that to a main character that has to attack to get XP, and that could feel a whole lot like old school Cosmo. So yeah, actually, I initially thought why is it limited, but immediately I thought of a pretty negative play experience reason why it should be limited. So I'm okay with that. This feels better late game than early game. Supporting characters tend to be bigger, nastier, more annoying late game. This is going to be really annoying if this is in your deck and Frenchie is the opposing main character. This can move blockers out of the way. This can move melee only attackers, cost them a turn, prevent them from getting a wound off that they otherwise would have. I think there's a lot of uses for this card. Going to be a little bit meta dependent. Like if Frenchie is the meta and everybody has range, this seems quite a bit worse. It's still useful for getting blockers out of the way, but you're not going to have that added value of preventing melee guys from attacking for a turn. Yeah, I think it's playable. It's a burn. Any combat, choose a defending supporting character on your side with 1 printed health, remove it from the combat, and then hide it. So this is think again, basically. You can't use it to protect your main character, but you can use it, especially in like a butcher deck where you're leaning really heavily into 1 health characters. This is just going to be cancel a combat and you don't get to hit that character again for the rest of it. So it's like it's like think again plus with a restriction. Think again is an amazing plot twist. So I think this is going to be likely if you're building a deck with a bunch of 1 health printed 1 health characters. Yeah, this is going to see some play. Seems good. You've done a murder. Oh wow, look at that art. Combat. So you can only play this when you're attacking. Put a +1 counter on an attacker on your side, and it is lethal this combat. Wow. Man. So we do there's a is there a plot twist that gives lethal somewhere in the game? I know characters that grant lethal, like the legacy Mr. Sinister. That definitely saw play. Giving characters lethal that shouldn't have lethal is a really big deal. And in a same box where you can give characters range that shouldn't have range, now you're shooting at characters with fatal damage, and you've got all this boy stuff really hates on characters that have multi-health, and I kind of like that, given that multi-health is one of the ways that superheroes are represented within our game. Giving the boys lots of ways to punish characters that have that advantage over them fits the theme so well. The +1/+1 counter here is fine. I don't think the +1 counter is the reason you put this in your deck. You put this in your deck for the ability to surprise lethal somebody. 100%. The +1 is gravy. I'm not sure if this would be playable without the +1, so I'm glad it's there. It's going to be a little bit meta dependent. If everybody has 1 health characters, lethal's way less important. But yeah, I think this card, again, definitely could see some play. So we have the safe house. It's fine. I kind of would have liked to get a shot where they had all the boys in the safe house, like Kamiko, Mother's Milk, where are they? But that's okay. Okay, moving on to not Vought, but the Seven. It is a little weird to me that this team is called the Seven and their team logo is the Vought V. So there's going to be a lot of times where I'm going to refer to this team as Vought, but just know that I mean the Seven. Okay, A-Train. He's a 5.56. That's pretty good stats for a level 1. Like 5.5, that's pretty rock solid to start at. World's fastest man. Pay main phase, pay red, ready A-Train. He can use this power any number of times on your turn. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So you could clear a board by yourself. I can't stop, I can't stop, I can't stop. Level 5, level up 5. When A-Train attacks, he gains 1 XP and a -1 counter. Oh, so he... Spoilers. Because of his addiction to V, he's hurting himself while he's using his superpower. This is so good. The theme is so good. Ah, super awesome games. Man, you guys nailed it. Uh, that is going to hurt this guy's playability. Like, he's going to get weaker. But then again, I guess every time he gains an XP, if he gets small enough that you can attack him and stun him, or he pays the red, attacks, gains the XP, gets small enough that he can stun himself. Either way, he can clear the -1 counters off of himself and be a 5/5 again on turn 2 or again on turn 3. This level up seems pretty doable. It's going to be a bad day if you don't get any reds, though. I think you have to have a turn where he gets to attack twice so you can level up at least by turn 4. If you're waiting till turn 5 to level up, you're probably going to be almost dead. Well, I don't know, 5/5. Yeah, yeah. I think you have to see some red, at least one red, and I think I'd like to see two reds on him uh, by turn like 3. Level up, level 2. He becomes a 7/7/6. He still has the ability to ready and can use it as many times as he wants. Which these powers are always a little frustrating to me because you know that you're going to get a better payoff at level 2, but you kind of have to use the power to get to level 2. It reminds me of the She-Hulk Civil War main character where you have to use all the plot twists to get to level 2, and then once you're there, she benefits from plot twists, but you don't have any left because you used them all to get to level 2. So addicted to Compound V, pay a blue, put 7 +1 counters on A Train, and at the start of your next turn, put 7 -1 counters on him. Um, I don't think the 7 -1 counters are that big of a deal. Because if you have the ability to pay a red and a blue in the same turn, you're a 14/14 who's attacking twice. Even if you don't get stunned back to avoid this minus. So there's a couple ways to avoid the -1s. You can make sure you get stunned, so you're going to have to hit into something that has 14 attack or better, and then you're face down during the time when he would get the -1 counters. Fine. Or if he does get the -1 counters, he just goes back down to a 7/7. He doesn't get stunned. Like the worst case scenario would be some way where your opponent on their turn removes all his -1 counters and doesn't even bother to attack him, and then at the start of your turn, you get the 7 and you flip face down. So I think if you're going to use the Compound V, you need to be careful to prevent your opponent from having that, like, setting up that auto stun condition. Uh, yeah, this guy seems riskier, like high risk, high reward. There's certainly going to be games where he's going to look amazing. He's going to ready a bunch and like single-handedly clear a board, which is something I really enjoy. I like that Buffy had that kind of mechanic. I was a fan of that in old verses, like with the Hellboy solo deck. So this guy feels like he could get a lot of work done, but he's going to be heavily draw dependent. If you don't hit those reds, you're not leveling up till kind of late. Yeah, he seems playable. I'm a little. How lucky are you? Because if you're unlucky, I feel like this guy could have some really frustrating draws. But if you draw what you need, I think he could look really good too. So uh, I think your mileage on this main character is going to be pretty heavily dependent on how risk averse you are. I tend to be pretty risk averse. I don't like playing decks that if I draw wrong, I can't do anything. I don't think he's that bad because 5/5 is still pretty solid for a few turns. I think A Train's going to be playable, but there's going to be games where he looks really bad. Homelander, sticks and stones won't break my bones. Pay green, Homelander can't be stunned this combat. That's so annoying. He has flight, he has range, he's a 4/3/7. 3 defense on a level 1 is a little weak, but that sticks and stones power absolutely offsets that weakness. You guys are the real heroes. Level up 4 when a character with 1 printed health appears on your side. Homelander gains an XP. So this is a little bit of a weird place for this to be, especially if you're playing this box against this box. Like if you want to play the boys against the 7, Homelander's level up condition is actively antagonistic to several of the things that the boys do. This is going to make the what was it, diabolical plot twist much worse. Whatever one gave -1s based on health, it's going to make that much worse. It's going to harm the boys' ability to be the boys if Homelander is surrounding himself with a bunch of civilians, which I guess thematically does kind of fit what happens during the first season of the boys. But mechanically, I could see that being a little frustrating for the player. Like if you do that thing where you buy the box with a buddy and hey, you get the 7 cards, I'll take the boys cards, and you're on the boys side and you're playing into this guy, he's kind of playing mean with some of the things that you want to see to be successful playing as the boys. But what does he get once he levels up? He becomes a 6/6/7. Does he have the same health? No, okay. That stat line is not super fantastic, but again, he can pay a green and make sure that he doesn't get stunned. We're a different breed. Main phase, pay a blue. Each supporting character on your side with 2 or more printed health can't be stunned this turn. So this is going to be a weird deck. You're going to want to have a early game that consists of a bunch of 1 health characters, but then you're going to want to and he needs 4 XP, but then you're going to want to transition in the mid game into playing multi-health characters so that you can basically sticks and stones every character on your side of the board. Um, that at first glance that feels a little awkward to me, but I'm guessing that when I get down into the 7 supporting characters, they're going to have a curve that's going to support this playstyle. Both of these powers are quite good. The blue power obviously is going to require you to build your deck towards having multi-health characters, whereas his level up condition is going to want you to build the early part of your deck towards having single health characters. So it's a little bit non-bow, a little bit anti-synergy there, but pretty much everything else about this card I think is strong. The stat line, the 4-3 and the 6-6 are both a little on the weak side for what I expected for Homelander, but given that he's going to have so many attacks where he just gets to swing in for free and not get stunned, even though his numbers aren't big enough, it's probably fine. Queen Maeve. She is a 3/4/6 casual cruelty. Main phase, pay yellow. Put enough -1 counters on an enemy to make that enemy's defense 1. Yeah, that can be pretty annoying at pretty much every point in the game, especially if you have any other ability to put -1 counters on stuff. You can get an out of combat stun. Yellow plus whatever that other ability is. Never let them see you like this. Level up 7. When an enemy character gains 1 or more -1 counters, Maeve gains that many XP. So her casual cruelty feeds directly into her level up condition. It does need to get to 7, depending upon how. Now, your opponent does have a lot of control over this. If they just opt to not play supporting characters, like if I have a main character that's big enough, like Homelander, say, that I can crack into Maeve and put wounds on her without giving you supporting characters to get experience for you, even if I only do it for a turn or two and just put you a little bit behind, I might be leveling up while you're still trying to get past your 3-4 stats. I could see Maeve getting stalled out a little bit there in the mid game. Once she levels up, though, she becomes a 5/8. I do like that stat line with 6 health and gains bottomless casual cruelty. Wait. Oh, just casual cruelty becomes bottom. Put enough -1 counters on an enemy character to make its defense 1. So the bottomless cruelty lets you hit main characters, whereas her level up only lets you hit supporting characters. That's really disgusting. That's really, really, really disgusting. Just be original. Main phase, pay a green, choose a supporting character, remove all counters from it. Well, that's a character that's going to give A-Train some problems, I think. You can only do it during the main, though, so even if A-Train is attacking in with his counters, she would have to stay face up in order to get the real exquisite punish off on A-Train there. +1 counters are really big in the game. They've been really big in the game for a long time. I don't know that pay a green to wipe counters is like the kind of payoff we want to see at a level 2 main character. There's a lot of ways to get -1 counters off of characters. It certainly fits into the kit of what Maeve is trying to do because her casual cruelty power gets nerfed pretty hard. If I have 10 +1 counters on me, well, no, because it keeps adding them until the defense is 1, so it doesn't matter how many it has to. It put the 10 and then it'd keep going. So yeah, I was thinking maybe it was trying to clear the counters to make way for the -1s, but given how both casual cruelty and bottomless casual cruelty are phrased, they're going to clear the +1s by themselves and keep going until they get 1 defense. So yeah, the be original power. I'm a little lukewarm on that. Pretty much everything else about this card is very strong. Yeah. Starlight. She is a level 1, 2/4/6 with range. You should look away. Main phase, pay a blue, choose an enemy player to choose 2 face-up supporting characters on their side, daze them both. I do not like that the opposing player gets to pick where this targets, but as the attacker, since this is a main phase power, you're going to be able to have some control over the state of their board before this power goes off. Or I'll blind you. Level up 5. At the end of your turn, Starlight gains 1 XP for each stunned enemy character. So she's going to want to put people face down and not necessarily kill them. So 1 health characters. This gives her a way to sort of play around the Billy Butcher deck by you should look away, getting characters face down who would otherwise die as soon as they get stunned. So it's good that she has that built in. I honestly think you should look away is more important for her level up condition than it is for board control. Once she levels up, she still has You Should Look Away. Does it work the same? Yes, it still works the same way. She becomes a 6/7 with range, which is a pretty good bump to her attack. Uh, all I wanted was to save the world. Any combat, pay a red. If another character on your side is defending, daze each attacker. So she can't use this to protect herself, but she can use it to protect other characters. So there you go. You have your supports in the back row. Somebody tries to fly over you and mess with them, you stop that from happening. I kind of wish she could defend herself as well. 7 defense doesn't seem big enough for that. Yeah, I'm a little unhappy that the skill power doesn't let her use that while she's defending herself, but I guess You Should Look Away kind of gives her that board control. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit lukewarm on Starlight. It is going to depend on how +1 counter heavy the meta is. If everybody's trying to stack counters on all their characters, You Should Look Away becomes a very good power. And she has range, so you can tuck her in the back row, put some stuff up front, and then use her. All I wanted was to save the world power to punish your opponent for attacking into the stuff that you put up front. Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it because overall the card it synergizes with itself. The level up isn't that hard. The stats are okay. Oh, and at level 2, she's dual affiliated with the 7 and the boys, so that would give her access to boys plot twists on top of everything else. Um, she's probably playable. I feel a little reluctant to give her the thumbs up, and I can't quite put my finger on why. Uh, there's nothing about this card that I actively dislike. It just feels like it might not be doing enough. Like, even if you're getting all your stuff, dazing characters isn't as good as putting wounds on them, generally speaking. So she might be totally playable, but just not potent. Maybe. I don't know. I'm a little reluctant to say bad things about the card when I can't put my finger on exactly what it is that's making me reluctant to say good things about the card. All right, moving on to the Deep. He is a 2/5/6. I mean, yeah, I can talk to fish. Draw phase, pay a yellow. Look at the bottom 7 cards of your, because the 7 Cs. Look at the bottom 7 cards of your deck, set 2 aside, and shuffle the rest into your deck. Put the set aside cards on top. The Green Crusader Initiative. That power is very good. Hold on. I don't want to just blow past that. You get to select from 7 cards. You get the 2 best ones, and you set your draw for next turn. I kind of wish it was May. I kind of wish you could fail to find any and keep all 7 on the bottom, or shuffle all 7 in if none of them are what you're looking for. But I guess you can't have everything. Overall, completely fixing your next draw is pretty strong. That's a good power, especially early in the game. The Green Crusader Initiative, level up 3. When you play a might location, the Deep gains +1. uh, yeah, the level 1 power is going to be really critical to make sure that you find those basic or those locations with green superpower on them. We've seen before characters who have these sort of seemingly not difficult, your opponent can't mess with it at all types of level up conditions, but your variants can mess with you. You can go a whole game without seeing a single green unless you have some way to dig for him, which he has a built-in way to dig for him. The Deep, level 2, 6/8/6. That's good stat line. I mean, yeah, I can talk to fish. Oh, so that's the same. And then Trouble at the Dock, River, and Lake. Main phase, pay a green, put the bottom 7 cards of an enemy deck into their KO pile. That is an alternate win condition. You don't lose a game of versus by having no cards in your deck. Okay, you can use the talk to fish power before or after. Yeah, yeah, obviously. You don't lose in versus for having no cards in your deck, but you lose to having no resources that you can draw. So it's not a direct auto like alt win, but if your opponent has no cards and they can't do anything, you're gonna get ahead. You're gonna take control of the board. You're gonna win those types of games. So chipping away now is 7 cards off the bottom of the deck. I mean, he's gotta play at least 3 greens. So we're talking about 21 cards. I mean, that's a third of the deck if you use all your greens for this and you just use the 3 that he leveled up with. Um, I feel like this is kind of like Frenchie. Like the things that he does that aren't his alt win condition are all pretty solid already. I don't think he's as good as Frenchie. The range power, gun runner power on Frenchie is much better than the talking to fish. But getting to choose cards from the bottom of your deck and uh, and stack them to the top of your deck, that's gonna enable some combos. Probably not as good as Mother's Milk, but he's got 2-5-6 becomes a 6-8, gets to dig for what he wants. Yeah, I Deep seems playable. He seems playable. Um, that level up condition could be a problem because you've got to get the lemon lime here. Like if you're not hitting the greens, you have to be hitting the lemons in order to dig for the limes. And if you're not going to level up. And 2-5 is not going to survive unless you level up. So I think you got to get him leveled up. And then ripping cards out of the bottom of your opponent's deck. I think that's cool. It's probably 7 is probably not a big enough game number to actually win games on the back of that power, but if you're not spending the greens anywhere else and you have to have them to level them up, seems okay. Yeah. Uh, so we're about to hit the supporting characters. Let's just run over the main characters one more time, real quick. A Train, he seems scary to me. He seems like he has really high upside potential, but there's a lot of risk in how his level up works and how dependent you are on hitting those reds. There definitely are going to be some punishes that are going to present themselves if you're playing this guy without knowing him in and out. What seems like a very aggressive, fun main character. Homelander's stats seem a little anemic to me. I'm not quite sure why he has such small stats, but everything else about the character is very strong. The flight, the range, the 7 health, the sticks and stones power that prevents him from getting hit when he should be getting hit. The bifurcated way that you're going to have to build his deck with 1 health characters early, switching into 2 health characters late does seem a little odd, but I suspect when we look at the curve of the 7 supporting characters, it's going to make more sense. Queen Maeve, it's a card that all fits together and synergizes with itself pretty well, I think. Your opponent does have a little bit of control over your ability to use casual cruelty if they refuse to put out supporting characters, or they put them out and make sure they get stunned or removed before you can use casual cruelty. Could make it a little bit harder for her to level up. Once she does level up, bottomless casual cruelty is real mean to the opposing main character. I'm not sure about the B original power, but overall, this seems like a solid, reasonable main character. Starlight, just she's not doing it for me. I do think her ability to manipulate the opposing player's board, daze characters, that feeds into her level up condition, which then feeds up into the things that she's doing at level 2. Getting the boys affiliation, allowing her to access boys plot twist seems pretty good. It all adds up to me to a lot of things that nothing's like jumps out at me as being particularly strong. Maybe the whole package is greater than the sum of its parts, but I'm kind of lukewarm on this Starlight main character. The Deep, I really like his draw fix power that he has at both level 1 and 2. His stats do seem a little weak. I'm not convinced that his level 2 power is going to be sufficient to actually get an alternate win condition, but overall, another reasonable, solid, if maybe his level up might prove problematic some percentage of the time, main character. Uh, I really I like I think everything's playable. I don't think any of these main characters are just straight up bad. Donna January, 1 cost, 1/1/1. This was our dream. Pay a red, main phase, put a +1 counter on each other 7 character on your side. Donna pays 1 less power symbol to use this power while Starlight is face up. Okay, well that makes the Starlight main character look better immediately. Um, I guess will remain to be seen what Starlight was. The Starlight 7 drop just boys? The Starlight 7 drop that we saw earlier is just boys affiliated. So I imagine there's going to be another Starlight on the 7 team. We'll see how late it is. I'm guessing Donna January is there specifically to support the Starlight main character. I have a hard time paying a red to put a +1. I guess unless you're on a mono deck. If you're doing that thing where I'm playing all 7 cards and you're playing all boys cards and you're playing this box against itself, sure, this is gonna you're gonna get some value out of paying the red. But I think in general constructed in a broad format, you're probably going to want to use this power for free most of the time. 2 cost, Ashley. Wow, they only have one drop. Okay, 2 cost, Ashley Barrett. 2-4-1. It's a pretty decent defense number for a 2 cost. SVP of Hero Management. Build phase, pay yellow. Draw a card for each face up 7 character on your side with printed health 2 or higher. Probably don't want to use her. Oh, and it's not limited to supporting characters. So you will be able to draw a card off your main character, assuming your main character is the appropriate affiliation. Probably don't want to use her like turn 2. This seems like a card you'd probably underdrop later in the game to try to get extra gas. Like, how many cards do you want to draw off the yellow? I'm thinking you need like a minimum of 2 to make it worth it. So if you can set that up by turn 2, okay, fine, do it. But my guess is most of the time you're going to be underdropping her later in the game to try to draw 2 or more cards. Black Noir. He is a 3 cost, 3/3/2 with stealth. I do really like early game stealth characters. They see a lot of use in the history of Versus. Ambush. When Black Noir attacks an exhausted character, put 2+1 counters on him. So he can get into the back row and he becomes a 5/5 when attacking if your opponent presents the opponent the opportunity for that to happen. Seems pretty solid. 5/5 on turn 3 is pretty decent, and he can get past annoying front row blockers. Seems okay. 3/3 is like by itself a little weak. I guess with the 2 health, that kind of offsets his otherwise weak stat line. I think you probably don't play this guy unless you know you're going to have a good attack where you can make him a 5/5. If you're just playing him for a 3/3, that feels not as good. I guess it's better than no recruit, but not as good. Okay. Dr. Vogelbaum. He is a 1/6/1. You're my greatest failure. Main phase, pay a blue. Put a -1 counter on an enemy character. It loses and can't gain keyword and superpowers until it has no -1 counters. So I could see a world where you do that and you leave the counter on there. You leave the character alone just to keep them small or keep them collared, essentially. But my guess is probably more often you're going to pay it, you're going to remove annoying powers that could impact combat, and then you're going to go hit that character. So I'm not sure how often, and it is just an enemy character, so this does affect main characters too. Man, that could be a really annoying ability. That could be super annoying. Yeah, it's not going to fit every deck because you're not playing this guy for his 1/6 body for sure. You're playing this guy, if you're playing him at all, you need to be able to use his power. So I'm guessing pay the blue to essentially play it. Yeah, I mean, this guy's pay a blue, get an ultimate nullifier, like a collar. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's not going to fit every deck, but that's good. All right, 4 cost, Madeline Stillwell. Man, I feel like the quality of the art on the 7 side is lower than it was on the boys side. Okay, Madeline Stillwell, 2/7/1. We make heroes super. Build phase, pay yellow. Choose a main character on your side to get plus attack, plus defense equal to its printed attack and defense until Madeline Stillwell leaves your side. Wow. So it is limited. It is limited to your main character, so you're not going to be able to use this to juice up a supporting character, but it is not limited to a 7 affiliated character. So anybody could use this to double their main character stats. And again, I keep coming back to Rogue because it's one of the most prominent examples in my head. But you have a flying main character who has double their stats. All of a sudden, it gets a lot harder to get to the back row and hit this 7 defense character. The number 7 on turn 4 is pretty relevant, which means you play her out. Your main character is probably going to be doubled up for like a couple turns maybe before your opponent can get to her. It is a little slow. Like, she's not going to attack. So you're playing your 4-drop on turn 4. And instead of having your main character plus a 4-drop that you can attack with, you pretty much just have your main character. So it is a big investment. And if you get punished for it, if your opponent's able to attack and not get stunned back, you basically get 2 for 0'd. You know, she's probably not going to be able to stun the person who takes her out with that 2 to attack. If she does, you're still getting 2 for 1. Uh, Still, big risk, big reward. You make this investment into Madeline Stillwell, and there's going to be games where that wins the game, like, where they never get through your main character again. Yeah, I think that's playable. All right, 4 cost. The Deep 642 Dolphin Rescue Attempt. Build phase, pay green, search your deck for a character, almost put it onto your side, but instead put it into your KO pile. This works extremely well for, what was it, the 6 cost Kamiko? Yeah, if she's in your KO pile, you can pull her out. Now, it is worth noting that both the Deep's Dolphin Rescue Attempt power and Kamiko both cost green, so you're leaning really heavily on green if you want to pull off that particular combo, but there's probably reasons why you want to have other characters in your KO pile as well. Uh, yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit weird. It is a little bit of a strange power, but there are going to be other cards that really want you to. And the card clarification out of the rulebook on this, to almost put a card on your side, you could lower the character card close to the table without touching it and then sadly place it into your KO pile. If it helps, spoilers, try to imagine you've rescued a dolphin and it's in the back of your speeding van, but when the cops block the road, you slam the brakes and the dolphin crashes through your windshield and splats onto the street 50 feet in front of you and is then run over by a truck. Spoiler alert. Doppelganger, 5 cost, 1/1/1. That is an absolutely unacceptable stat line for a 5 drop. Lookalike. As Doppelganger appears, choose another supporting character on any side. Doppelganger becomes a copy of that character, but keeps his own name. So that's how he's able to get away with being a 1/1/1 because he copies somebody else. That's a huge risk, though. So he gets titles, names, modifiers, counters, and powers that are not printed on the card, like if gained through, or it does not copy. So it's the printed information on the card. So he doesn't copy the title, name, modifier, counters, printed powers if they are gained from an equipment. Whether the card is face up or face down doesn't matter for that clarification. So you got to copy somebody who has something good printed on the card to make this guy worth it. Yes, there's going to be times where copying your opponent's best thing is going to look really good, and there's going to be times where this is just absolutely dead, because the reason their best thing is their best thing is because it's stacked up with a bunch of counters or has an equipment or something else the doppelganger can't copy. I'm not a huge fan of these types of cards in general, cards that force me to play like very specific things or expect my opponent to play specific things to set me up. I'm pretty lukewarm on them in general because I hate the experience of having this card in my hand and having nothing to copy and nothing to do on turn 5. That would bum me out. So I can see places where this is going to be good, and I'm sure people will have some success with this card, but for me personally, this is not something that really fits my playstyle very well. Ezekiel, a 5 cost 5/6/2, my loving embrace. Pay a red, move any number of other supporting characters to their front row. So this functions almost exactly the same as the Gentleman from the Buffy set, except you have to pay for it. And he's a 5/6. Now the 2 health helps a little, but 5/6 on turn 5 is not the most impressive stat block. His ability is not the most impressive ability. I wish that it targeted all characters. If it moved main characters to the front row too, I would like it more. As it is, this is a tool for you to get to annoying support characters that your opponent was trying to keep hidden in the back row and let you stun them when your opponent didn't want you to be able to declare those attacks. It feels like a lot on kind of a weak body. I don't think I like this card. A-Train. He's a 6/6/2 on turn 6. Here comes the A-Train. You can power up A-Train with any 7 affiliated character. That's weird. The train has left the station. When A-Train attacks, at the end of combat, you may remove a +1 counter from him. If you do, ready him. Ooh, that's fun. So I'm not sure, excuse me, I'm not sure why he is power upable with other 7 affiliated characters, but that does give you an outlet for, like, if you drew Donna later in the game, she's not going to be as good. You can throw her down, put a +1 on A-Train, stun somebody, remove the +1, attack and stun somebody else. This feels like it's going to be one of those skill testing cards. Like somebody who's able to really be good at hand management and knowing exactly where they stand you're gonna have turns where you get like 3, 4 attacks out of this guy, and you're gonna look like a genius. And then there's gonna be other times where he's just a 6/6 too. Uh, I like what this card is doing though. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's gonna be good, but I like what he's doing. Translucent. 7/1/2. Translucent is invisible. He doesn't protect characters and can attack protected characters. Carbon metamaterial skin. While Translucent is attacking a supporting character, he can't be struck. So this guy is deal withable with a single -1 counter, but he has sort of like pseudo stealth. He can sneak around. Thematically, it's on point. I get why they made him a 7/1, but like he's so weak to just a single -1 counter. Like that's rough. Uh, he's gonna come down and stun something though. But 7 attack isn't that great either. I feel like this guy's stats could have been pumped just a little bit more. That seems like a big investment for not as much of a payoff as I would like, but he's okay. He's okay. Queen Maeve, 7 cost, 12/12. Now those are some stats. 4 health. Wow. Tough. That's a good word too. I really did break every bone in my arm. When Maeve recovers, put a -1 counter on her for each wound she has. So there's the drawback. So this is a way overstated, massively healthy character that you can choose to recover and keep like in the front row. Really, the only thing that would have made this card more disgusting is flight. So she's not going to be able to fly. She's not going to be able to block in the air. But there's not a lot of flying in photo. So she's going to be annoying. She's going to be tough to deal with. She does get weaker over time, which I think is kind of cool as she takes damage. The superheroes in the universe of the boys can be hurt, can be killed. That's a cool representation of that. This is a very playable 7 drop. 7 costs, Starlight. Range 8/7/2. Wow, we go from 12/12 to 8/7. Wow. Electricity goes in. Main phase, pay a blue. For the rest of the game, starting on your next turn, Starlight can use Blast comes out. Oh, wow. So you have to pay once just to even get access to the power. Main phase, pay a blue. Stun a supporting character. Starlight can use this power if she used Electricity goes in on an earlier turn. Okay, so it's going to cost essentially 2 blues, and they are 2 separate superpowers, so you would be able to pay for them. You'd be able to play both on the same turn. Again, it's something about this set, they've decided to do a lot of multi-location powers. It's fine. This is probably pretty good. It does feel a little bad to have to gain the electricity before you can blast it out, especially when you couple it with those 8/7 stats. So if you don't have the blues, I think she looks pretty bad. But if she does have the blues, that blast comes out power is really, really strong. So assuming you've got the necessary stuff, you play this on 7, she kills something, she attacks at range into something else, and turn after that, maybe she does it again. Yeah, the upside on this card is really huge. There may be some awkward turns where you don't get to use the electricity power at all, in which case 8/7/2 with range on 7 feels pretty weak. But I have to assume in constructed you're going to see your blues more often than not, and she's going to look disgusting. 8 cost, Homelander. This is why they don't have a second 1-drop. Flight range 14/14/3. That is all ridiculous. I can do whatever the hell I want. Build, main, or combat, pay a green, and search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. Everything about this guy is nuts. The stats are nuts. The health is nuts. Flight and range. The ability to search any card you want. This is really, 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 really strong. You got to get to turn 8, so there is kind of a big ask before you get any of this stuff, but that's very strong. Compound V costs 2. Equip only to a 7 main character. Steroids for soups. The first time the equipped character uses a superpower each turn, it pays 1 less per superpower. Casual cruelty, all of them. The Homelander one, the Sticks and Stones, that's excellent. All of the 7, like this is as good as the 7 main characters are good. It is going to take a turn from you. You are going to have to, like, I don't know if Homelander would want to recruit this on turn 2, because at that point he needs to be recruiting 1 health characters to try to get his level up condition. But later in the game, absolutely. This is a very playable card for all of the superpower, all the superhero characters. A-Train getting a free ready and attack late in the game. Yeah, it's very playable. The 7. This art is very weird because it's illustrated, but these cards are photographic. Weird. I don't know why they... I mean, the art in a vacuum looks cool, but just why have illustrated art on photographic cards? It's so confusing since we chose to make the universes divide along the images on the cards. Anyway, any combat, if your main character is defending, it gets +7 attack or +7 defense this combat. This is excellent. It's an excellent plot twist. 7 is a huge number to add to your character out of nowhere. This is a savage surprise. This is a I can't remember what the name. I'm thinking acro dodge, but that's old versus. What's it called? Super senses. This is a savage surprise plus or a super senses plus. It does require you to be on the 7 team affiliation, but this is an excellent plot twist. Also reminds me of the Fantastic Four plot twist. They'll find you. Main phase, choose a character to get +2 attack this turn. It has stealth against supporting characters. Weird that they limited it so that the stealth couldn't go into main characters. Interesting. I'm also not a huge fan of combat pumps that you have to play during the main phase. Sort of tips your hand a little bit. I much prefer to be able to play my combat pumps during the combat. But since this one grants stealth, it kind of has to be main phase. +2 is not the best number in the world. I think the reason you care about this card is because it gives you the stealth plus the attack. Maybe this is playable. I don't think this is nearly as good as the 7, but this is probably playable. Certainly if you're playing this box against this box, this is a playable card. Why settle for ordinary? Any combat or any turn combat, put a +1/+1 counter on supporting character in the combat equal to that character's printed health. So this is sort of like the opposite side of the boys. This is rewarding 7 characters for having extra health as opposed to punishing them. It makes sense. I'm less excited about this now that I've already seen the boys one, but it makes sense doing the symmetry. You done good, lad. Butcher with the laser baby. An unaffiliated plot twist. Choose boys or 7. Choose an attacker to get +1/+1 this combat for each face-up character on your side with the chosen team affiliation. This is like a sort of loyalty plot twist. It doesn't require you to all be on the same team, so it's not as strict as loyalty, but if you want to get maximum value out of this, you are going to be on a loyal list. This is going to be as good as your deck is. Generally speaking, in versus, and particularly in photo, you are not heavily rewarded for playing a loyal list. I think the only loyal specific plot twist that we have in photo is proprietary tech, and that requires your opponent to have characters with flight and range to get maximum value out of it, which is not something that happens that often. This could potentially be a good plot twist, but if this is the only loyalty benefit that you have, and you're not running proprietary tech, and you're choosing to run boys characters and not run other characters just for this card, I don't think this card's probably good enough for that. So maybe we'll see some more loyalty support in our photographic, and this card will be better at that time. But right now, outside of the format where you're just playing like the boys cards against the boys cards, I have a hard time seeing this card getting that much. I mean, how much would you need? +1/+1 for each face-up character. I guess if you play this and you're getting it and you have at least 3 boys characters in play, your main character, say, counts as one of them, and then you have 2 supporting characters that are on team, that's a +3/+3. That's actually not bad. So, yeah, maybe I'm being a little too harsh on this. Maybe this has some legs, some playability, even if you're not running any other loyalty stuff. And even if you don't do your deck loyal, you just maybe early game you have more boys cards, or late game you have more boys cards. So you know there's a part of the game where this is going to be active for a +2, +3, or maybe even more. That's probably good. But again, it heavily dependent on how your deck is constructed. Vought Tower provides 1 of each color for 7 characters, even though it says Vought, but that's fine. And then finally, we have the Psychiatric Hospital is our laboratory for the boys. Secret Meeting is our academy for the boys. Movie Set is our fortress. And Sparring Room is our training room. I actually like all the art on these is fine. And that brings us to the end of the boys set. Overall, this is like a solid like 9.5 out of 10, maybe even a 10 out of 10 for me. I mean, if I'm talking just me personally, there are a few little gripes I have with the occasional character here and there, things that I maybe would have done a little bit differently for myself. Uh, but as far as a releasable, playable box, that I understand that I'm not the only kind of player who plays versus. So giving cards that appeal to other play styles and appeal to other players, while I might not like them as much, I'm glad that they're out there. That's one of the things that makes versus so awesome is that there's cards for everybody. There's cards for every play style. I'm a huge fan of this box. This has been a long, long time coming for me, and wow, overall, the fact that the boys even made it to Versus, I consider to be a massive, massive win. There was a long period of time where I didn't think we'd ever see something like this. I mean, this property is offensive and dark and weird in so many ways, while the comic's way, 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 way worse. Even the show has like some very messed up, weird stuff in it. So for this to come to a game that I play with Marvel and Buffy and these other IPs, it's just so thrilling to me. So again, I've gone on at length a number of times about how excited I am to be able to play as Billy Butcher in my favorite card game, and this becoming a reality is very much, very literally a dream come true for me. And these cards being this good is just icing on this whole cake. Okay, I'm not gonna say I'm not. I'm done just bleeding praise out of all of my pores for this set. I could not be more excited. I hope you are too. Let's go win some games.